Just yesterday, the Wall Street Journal published an op-ed by Machado in which she wrote, quote, "I'm writing this from hiding, fearing for my life, my freedom, and that of my fellow countrymen from the dictatorship led by Nicolás Maduro." Maduro did not win the Venezuelan presidential elections on Sunday, she wrote. He lost in a landslide to Edmundo González, 67% to 30%. I know this to be true because I can prove it. I have receipts obtained directly from more than 80% of the nation's polling stations. And now Secretary of State Antony Blinken issued a statement recognizing opposition candidate Edmundo González Urrutia as the winner of those elections on Sunday. With us now is David Smolansky, an authorized spokesperson on behalf of the Venezuelan opposition. He joins us from Washington, D.C., where he lives in exile. David, thank you for being with us today. What is going on in Venezuela today as far as you see?
Well, thank you so much for having me. What we are having in Venezuela is an elected president, Edmundo González. He won by a landslide last Sunday. It has been the biggest margin ever in any presidential election in our country, even though this election was not free and fair. And the regime, of course, behaving as a dictatorship, is not transferring power and is using the military forces and inter and counterintelligence agencies to repress, and more specifically, targeted repression. There are at least 700 illegal detention at the moment you're doing this interview to me, and at the same time, at least 19 people have been killed. We are ready for a peaceful and orderly transition in Venezuela that will not only benefit Venezuelans, but will benefit the whole region.
Yeah, any transition in Venezuela would depend on the person in charge of that regime, right? And we're talking about Chavez and now Maduro that have really so far been able to control the military using the vast resources of Venezuela, the country with most petroleum reserves in the world, you know, extraordinary amounts of gold and so many other minerals. How do you see this happening when Maduro continues to be in control of the state security apparatus?
We need the armed forces to step up. We need the armed forces to behave institutionally, to obey the Constitution, and to respect what the vast majority of Venezuelans said last Sunday. There is no doubt of what happened last Sunday. We have the proof with the voting records. We have the proof with different recounts that were made. We have the proof with the exit polls. And, you know, many of those soldiers are suffering the same problems as many Venezuelans. They cannot eat 3 times a day. They don't have access to electricity, to water, to internet. Many of them have fled the country. Many soldiers and police are part of those 8 million people that have fled Venezuela. So this is the moment to step up, to behave institutionally, to obey the Constitution, and respect the vast majority of Venezuelans that voted peacefully last Sunday. That's what we are asking. That's the request. As I said, we are ready for a transition, and we are ready to govern Venezuela, and we are ready to rebuild our nation that deserves democracy, deserves freedom, deserves access to justice.
And I think it's important that people here recognize what we're talking about is going on in Venezuela, but that 8 million plus people from that country have been forced to leave over the last, decade plus, and many of them forced to come to the United States in their search for freedom. So this is something that has a direct relation to what we in this country live through and will probably be dealing with. So my question to you is, the Secretary of State yesterday very clearly said Maduro lost the election, Edmundo González Urrutia won. That's the United States policy now. There are other countries in our region, including Brazil and Cuba and Nicaragua and Mexico and Honduras, that are saying, no, we want transparency, but we're not against, Maduro leaving. Very quickly, what do you need?
Well, 2 things very, very, very quick here. First of all, if Maduro prevails, if Maduro use every tool to keep in power, unfortunately, there will be more people fleeing the country. So from 8 million, we can get to 9 or 10 million, and many of them will try to come to the U.S. Let me remind you, during the last 3 years, at least 700,000 Venezuelans have come to the U.S. through the southern border. Yep. So obviously, this is a thing that is affecting the whole region. And we want people to stop fleeing the country. We want families to be reunited. And with the other countries, I mean, they have to respect what the vast majority of Venezuela has said. The majority of the countries of this hemisphere have said that what the Electoral Council expressed last Sunday was not transparent. And many of countries have already said that Edmundo González is the president-elected of Venezuela. So there is no difference of Edmundo González right now in Venezuela to Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico. Both are elected president. And we want to start a transition. And that is why the armed forces need to step up. And to step up is to behave institutionally, obey the Constitution, and respect the vast majority of Venezuelans.